Morena, welcome. Welcome to our council meeting for the 17th of October. And this morning I'm going to invite Councillor Colin McFadyen to open our meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I was working through this, I was a little bit concerned that my page wasn't very full, so I found a solution. I increased the font. By rotation, this will be my last opportunity to open the council meeting before the next council election. For the record, I am not volunteering to do it again, the opener. 2 years down, less than one to go until elections. Some of you may say or think, as we ponder our future with MDC, assuming you want to and can get re-elected, we will all be receiving input from the community and family. Mostly well-intentioned, many will not know why we chose to be an elected member. We all give it our best to a varying degree to fulfil these roles, albeit with some having a different view as to the role of councillors in a constitutional democracy. What I am sure is that we share underlying wishes for our ratepayers and also for the wider community, such as invest in and support our youth, to make Feilding and surrounding area a great place to live, work and prosper. Work to provide a safe environment with opportunities and rights for all. Live as a united community, respecting the way that we may have different cultures. Wisely invest in services and infrastructure assets to protect house values, as many of our residents, this is the pathway to funding retirement. Get the balance right to achieve these outcomes to keep rates as low as possible. The election process will deliver a group of elected members in 2025 that, like a family, they are who they are. We cannot choose our elected team members, but as we have done in the last 24 months, they will need to respect each other's views, agree to disagree on some issues, and provide the leadership so they also will not end up in a dissenting council. Occasionally we hear from ratepayers who are not happy, whether being well informed or not, who are promising to oust us at the next election. To these people who we acknowledge should have their say, please stand up and become an elected member so you too can endeavour to make a difference. For the next 12 months, let's keep giving it our best, not give the media any fodder and not end up in a shambles that some councils have become, that negatively reflects on all councils and our communities. Being elected is a privilege, but the sacrifices are significant, undervalued, and for some at a high financial cost, as we have adjusted to not being on everybody's Christmas card list. To the council operation and existing elected team, be patient with the next elected members as you bring them into the family, as they too to aspire to make our community a better place. Once they understand the limitations and the roles of being a councillor. In closing, a quote from Confucius: "Our greatest glory is not ever in falling, but in rising every time we fall. Let's not fall too often and continue to respect office and each other."
Thank you. Thank you. Well done.
Was less than one page in front.
And very appropriate given the media coverage at the moment. So thank you. Item 2, apologies. We have one today from Councillor Quarry, so I will move that we accept the apology of Councillor Quarry, seconded by Councillor Hadfield. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. And welcome Councillor Bell on Zoom today. Item 3, confirmation of minutes. We have a recommendation there. I just want to note that we need to record in those minutes that our youth council students were here with us and participating. So we are recommending that we add that sentence, add the names of the youth councillors who were in attendance to the minutes. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ford.
Yes, Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 3rd of October 2024 be adopted as a true and correct record with the below amendment. Add the names of the youth councillors who were in attendance to the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Short, seconded. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest. Any topics on our agenda today that elected members may wish to declare? Councillor McFadyen.
Yeah, Thank you, Worship. I have a conflict around the gambling venues policy, so I will be stepping down from the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? No? Right. Item 5, there's no public forum speakers this morning, but we do have 3 for representatives from our representative grants, which help the people in our district represent us in their chosen field. So it's a pleasure to welcome this morning. First up, Lauren and Stacey, come and join us up at the table.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, we're up there. Okay, good. Yeah, there it is. Oh, geez. Okay, excellent. Good. We will do our very best. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Lauren. This is Stacey.
Hi,
Professionally, I am known as Trillian.
and I'm Dahlia Dangerous, and we are the ballet school dropouts. We own a business, a burlesque school, and we also are professional burlesque performers who travel internationally and represent New Zealand. We also have a show called Gin and Tassels, which is produced by us and is in fielding on a regular basis.
Just in case you wanted to know. Right, so we're here because you fine people gave us some money to go and do stuff, which is very appreciated. The project was the Saskatoon International Burlesque Festival. What they do is a little bit different than other festivals where they usually handpick their main headliners. Saskatoon does this by application, which is really neat. So just before Christmas last year, we decided to fire off an email with some pictures and videos and say, hi, we're awesome. We'd like to come visit. By January, like just after New Year's, they came back and said, yeah, we'd love for you to do that. And so we panicked a little bit and then we started squirreling our money. Not part of the thing, but in June this year, we suffered a really big setback from our business. The Thai restaurant beneath our studio burned down. So we ended up being closed for 2 months, not trading at all due to the fire damage, and we had to gut the whole place and rebuild. So that was really fun, leading up to going on tour. On a good note, we added a couple of things to our trip. So that was you.
That was me. I applied for Sin City Burlesque Festival in Vegas, and I got in, which was pretty amazing. It was 2 weeks before we headlined Saskatoon in Canada, so we extended our tour. Vegas is the second year, I think, that they have done that festival, and I'm the first New Zealand performer to perform there, so I felt really privileged representing New Zealand. And that was really exciting because we also networked quite a lot actually, and met a lot of people, and also visited the Burlesque Hall of Fame,
There
which
we are.
is
Look at us
very
being cute.
famous. Here's our photos. And so we went to the Burlesque Hall of Fame, which is basically a history of burlesque in the world. And we've always wanted to go to that, and being from New Zealand, we never get that opportunity given it's in Vegas. So we thought we'd jump on that.
Yeah. And it's a good opportunity to go and learn more things about the art that we indulge in. And we also managed to spend quite a lot of money on education resources for our studio as well. We brought back a ton of books. It was really cool. And then, just for fun, there's a little martini glass, big enough to fit a person. Next up, we spent a week in New York. We've been there a couple of times before, so we have friends to stay with, which is great. So we were able to do it on the cheap. So we decided to utilize this time, which we don't normally get to do. We took some classes at Steps on Broadway. We went through the fashion district. It's magnificent. So we get access to a lot of things that we can't get here in terms of like, costume materials and props and other bits and pieces. And we also got to go and see some shows. As performers and producers, we don't get to actually watch a lot because we're always the ones busy doing it. So we went to Nurse Betty, which is on the Lower East Side, and the performer on the left in there is actually the person that we commissioned to write the history lectures for our syllabus. She's currently doing a PhD in theatre and burlesque history at NYU, which is really neat. Yeah. And we also went to the MasterCard Midnight Theatre to see Brian Newman and Angie Pontani. So for reference, why that's cool, if you know anything about Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett, Brian Newman is their band leader. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then finally, there he is, good man. And then finally, we got the opportunity to go to Dwayne Park, which is an iconic live music and entertainment venue. That's literally the only picture that is PG-13, so sorry about that, but that's what the stage looks like. And it was magnificent to see it and watch the performances. So yeah, we've definitely learned a lot from our observations over there. And then Saskatoon, yay! It's amazing. You'd say it's quite a stark contrast from New York City, right?
Yeah, it's very wholesome. People go bird watching as a group, and I just think it's really cute. There's flower picking, and there's people go with their families to do pumpkin patch and pick up pumpkins for carving and stuff around. Obviously Halloween. So that was really, really cute, especially coming from New York and then also Vegas, which is all very, very different. But yeah, Saskatoon was really cool. It reminded me of home a lot more because it just smells like grass as opposed to New York that doesn't smell like grass. There was a movie night, and we also did a meet and greet, which was before we performed, like the night before we performed. And that was really fabulous when we met other supporters and other performers who are going to be on stage with us. And then we performed our solos on the first night. We also headlined with a performer who is also a producer in Montreal in Canada. And she has made noises about also potentially getting us back over to Montreal to perform again over there, which is really cool. We also did workshops. Oh, there's our photos.
There we are. Yay.
We also taught a workshop. We had about 12 people turn up, which was really amazing. And we kind of spoke about our syllabus we created, which is the first burlesque syllabus in the world. And then we performed our duo on the Saturday.
There we are.
Yeah, and then we did Zyra's workshop afterwards.
Yeah.
What else?
I think that's about it. What else? We had a pool party. And then there we go. So one of the organisers took us up to the local distillery and we went through the flower garden and the pumpkin patch. Yeah. But all in all, like everybody was really so friendly and welcoming and lovely. And yeah, we had a wonderful time and we had some really amazing feedback from our performances and from our workshop. We made a lot of connections in that. So yeah, we had a fantastic time. It's the first time in 8 years that we've been overseas. Yeah, so it's been a long time between drinks in that respect. Yeah. So thanks for that.
Excellent, thank you. So do they run it like a competition? Do they announce winners and, once you've done your performance?
Not that one.
No.
No, the Sin City Burlesque Festival does have a competition element on the second night, but no, not for Saskatoon.
And tell us a bit more about the classes that you run here. Do you run some in Fielding, did you say?
We have a show called Gin and Tassels that we produce, and it is in Fielding. And we've done it twice already, two times. Yeah. That's always been really popular. I think because it's very different to what people are usually used to seeing. But our studio is actually in Palmerston North. And we run 5 days a week teaching burlesque. We teach our own syllabus. So we created our own syllabus with the help of funding with Creative New Zealand. And now it's a 7-tier syllabus. And we have students who run through that syllabus. That syllabus is also being taught in Switzerland and also in Christchurch at the moment.
And what about the age group of the people that come to classes and, you know, obviously they're not all there wanting to get on stage and perform.
Yeah. It's adults only, of course. So anybody over the age of 18. It ranges generally. Me too. It ranges generally from like sort of early 20s through to late 50s. Yeah. And all genders, all body types, like everybody comes through. Yeah, come through.
Yeah, I can.
No, it's not everybody's there to get on stage. Some people do that's not why they came for a start. Some people, honestly, they just want to do something fun.
Yes.
And something that's for, just for them. Yeah. Yeah. Some of them catch the bug. A lot of them don't.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the team? Councillor Ford.
Yeah, just where to from here? You got any plans for the future?
Yeah, loads. Heaps. Well, we've already booked Gin and Tassels for August next year at in the concert chamber at the Civic Centre. Not quite sure yet. Like Stacey said, we are working with our other headliner to get back to Montreal. Yeah, so from there we'll probably build another tour. Like big plan. We do want to get across to Europe. Yeah, there's been a couple of tours like sort of constructed, but we never actually managed to get off the ground.
We'd also really like to, instead of just being considered as another performer in those festivals, be more headliners. So Saskatoon was the first time we headlined a festival. We'd headlined a show in Canberra many years ago, but that was pre-COVID, and then COVID kind of just squashed everything. So we'd quite like to have more headlining gigs, just because, I don't know, it's an opportunity to also teach as well and get our syllabus out there as well, and advertise that, because we'd like to have that syllabus in other countries as well as Switzerland and New Zealand. We'd quite like somewhere in America or Australia would be quite beneficial for us.
Yeah. And also like these travels, allowing us to network also means that we get to bring performers here. Yeah, so we had an international headliner at Gin and Tassels this year from Australia, and we've already lined up another one for next year. So it's about bringing more of the international community to like Palmerston North, to the region. Yeah,
because they also teach workshops as well, and that's really good for our students because they can learn from other teachers as well. So teaching from us is great, but we encourage them to also be taught by other performers and teachers as well, because when you get a bigger kind of like raft of opportunities and abilities and things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Amazing to hear what you do, and I wasn't even aware that we had a ballet school in the region. So so well done for what you do. Well done for putting Manawatū's name out there. And look forward to seeing where you go in the future. So thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Just Google up everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. Right. Next up, Mateo, come and join us up at the table. You can bring Mum too if Mum wants to come up and support you, or if. So Mateo attended the Māori Under 10 Rugby League tournament. So he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience. And we've got some pictures there up on the screen. Do you want to just push the button, Mateo, on the microphone so it's green? Good boy. And you might need to bend the top of it down. So
Or put it in your lap.
yeah, or put it in your lap. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Kia ora,
Kia ora.
kia ora tēnei koutou, ko Mateo toki ingoa. September 27th, 2024, I headed the Rotorua to play in the NZMRL Tamariki tournament. I was chosen to represent Manawatū in the under-10 team Māori rugby league team. I started playing rugby league 3 years ago when I was just 7 for Manawatū Sports Club. We are just a small club that started with 2 teams and over 3 years has grown to 10 teams in 9 grades. Our club is the best, giving us tamariki and lots of experiences. At the start of September, we also got the opportunity to head down to Queenstown to represent our club, being the only team in Manawatū attending the Rugby League Global Games tournament. Rugby league is a sport that helped me grow as a person on and off the field. It's a sport that I've grown a huge passion for and hope that one day I can represent my country, not just my region. But until then, I am so proud I was chosen to represent the Manawatū. This is the 2nd year I've represented Manawatū and the Māori team. Last year I was the youngest and both years being the smallest, as you will see in the pictures at the slideshow, but everyone tells me I have a heart of a lion. One of the smallest, but with no fear of tackling the biggest opposition. There was over 2,000 tamariki playing in the tournament. Teams even came from Australia. There was lots of whānau members there watching and support. Being every game we had to perform a haka to the opposite team and they would do it back. This was something we learnt leading up to the tournament at our trainings. It made me feel so proud to be a Māori. It was a tough tournament with so many talented kids. Unfortunately, we lost 4 out of 5 of our games. We did come away with a win at our last game against Tauranga Moana. We all played our best, but there were some very strong and big players from up north. It was a good experience and I felt blessed to have been given this opportunity. I'm going to keep practicing heaps and representing my club next season, and I will hopefully be chosen again next year to represent Manawatū. A highlight of the tournament was winning one of our games. Something I've been working on improving is my tackling and technique. Thank you so much, Manawatū District Council, for helping sponsor me to get my tournament being a one-income whānau with both my brother and I playing representative sports. It can make it a little hard. So with opportunities to be able to apply for this kind of sport and help makes it easier on whānau. Because of your help and support, I have been given an opportunity to represent my culture and my community. Form new friendships, grow some more confidence, learn new skills, and an opportunity I will remember for a lifetime. So once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was beautifully said. Well done. Congratulations. So no doubt you met a whole lot of new friends and your dream, you said, is to one day represent New Zealand. Is that right? That's great. So how many times a week do you practice?
Probably for Manawatū, we did it, I think, every Sunday. And for Manawatū Sports Club, we probably did it we sometimes did it Wednesday, and then I think we did it on Saturday a little bit.
That's a great commitment. So well done to doing that. Any questions, comments from around the table? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mateo, na mihi kia koe, he pai tō kōrero, he pai tō tū. That was a beautiful presentation that you've given. Well done. And well done to your mama and your whānau. Just having a look at your team that you represented when you went up to the north, were there others from other districts and other rohe, other regions that joined with you in your own team?
Yeah, it was Australia. I think it was just Australia
Oh,
and my team.
beautiful. Well, well done. Well done. And I'm looking forward to you being the next Sean Johnson from Manawatū.
That would be great. And these are some of the photos from your tournament.
Yeah.
And did you say you've got an older brother who plays as well?
Mhm.
That's great. It's in the family. And even the girls can get into it. Councillor Short.
Congratulations, Mateo. That's fantastic. I can't get over the energy you have at your age. And I think you should take up going into speech competitions as well, because your oration was fantastic. Just wanted to acknowledge Mum and Dad and all that it must take to get you places, and all the effort and the cost. And this fund is available each year, so don't be scared to come back.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mateo. Thank you for coming today. Thank you, Mum, for making the commitment. And I know that's not easy when you've got little ones. So thank you for coming. It was a pleasure to be able to help you, Mateo, and good luck with the future with your rugby. And we look forward to seeing your name up there in lights again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Okay, and someone who needs no introduction to us, Lachlan. Lachlan, come and join us. Lachlan Crate, this time is about his attendance at the Basketball World Cup in Turkey. So a warm welcome to you and your mum, dad. The coach, oh, sorry. I knew I'd get that wrong. Yeah.
Third dad, isn't it?
Oh.
Yes. Extended family is what I should say.
I would just like to say thank you over the last couple of years for supporting me, first in Guam, second in Qatar, then lastly in Turkey for the World Cup. Yeah, wow. Yeah, and this year for the World Cup. It means a lot to me, and then it's opened up lots of pathways. And later in the year after the World Cup, I got selected for the NBA Without Borders camp. So 5 of us from New Zealand went over to Perth and competed against some of the best players in Asia, which was good. And then also there was lots of college coaches over in Turkey watching the World Cup, which apparently I caught some eyes from them. So I got some interest from colleges. So hopefully by the end of next year, I'll be over in America in college. Yeah.
He will be. He's just got to decide where he's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome to be able to choose hopefully where you can go. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think obviously the World Cup was very special. So,
Yep.
there we go. They're better.
Yep.
Yeah, so the World Cup was pretty special. We had a tournament as a lead-in to the World Cup, which was the Istanbul Cup, where we played Egypt and Australia and Turkey. So we actually won that cup, and we beat Australia, which we haven't done for a long time, in age group stuff. And then obviously the World Cup, we were the first New Zealand age group team to top our pool at any World Cup. The first to make the round of 16, the first to win a quarter final, and we equalled the 2002 Tall Blacks as the most successful basketball team at a World Cup, finishing 4th. So a massive achievement for Lockie and the boys. One of the highlights, I think, of the trip, which I don't know if Lockie feels the same way, is that the boys got to go to Gallipoli in between some of our games and to go there and see history, I guess, of our country in the wars, and walk around and walk through the trenches and go to Chunuk Bair and see all the monuments and stuff. I think this generation is getting further and further away from understanding the importance of that. And it was cool for the 17-year-old boys to go and they did a haka on Anzac Cove, which was pretty cool. Yeah, so not just basketball, they got to see a little bit of history. Yeah, like you said, he's got multiple interests from Division 1 colleges. I don't know if you want to list them or not, or whether it's a secret, but from all different parts of the US, or from Hawaii all the way over to the cold of Wisconsin and up to Portland. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where he lands. I think wherever he lands, he's going to be successful anyway. But having the World Cup and being able to go and have the support of you guys helped him get that exposure that he might not have gotten just in New Zealand, because college coaches need to see you playing on an international stage.
Excellent. Well done. Congratulations. It's just, yeah, your career's just taken off. So it will be exciting to see where you go next and hear a bit more about that. Any questions, comments from our team? Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. When you do make your choice, what will you be studying?
Oh. I kind of want to stay in the sport. So if basketball doesn't work out, something to do with the body. And
Right.
so I can hopefully be a physio or like a strength and conditioning coach,
yeah.
something along the lines of that.
Awesome.
That's great.
I laugh because that's the question that Mum always asks. We have these Zooms with colleges. So you have a Zoom, there'll be like 6 college coaches and they're all talking about basketball. And then Mum always asks that question and he always rolls his eyes like, let's leave you. So that is the question I always ask him. What are we studying?
Yeah.
I actually coached in college for a couple of years, and a lot of our freshmen used to come in undeclared. So they'd come in and do just a broad range of subjects, and then they kind of narrow
Yeah.
as they get through the college. Some do come in with the idea that they want to do medicine or whatever, but a lot of them, especially in the sports field, will come in undeclared, and the first year in the US is very, very broad.
So how long do you have to sign? Do they sign you up for to stay there?
I don't really know how it works. This guy knows how it works. I think.
So it'll be a 4-year scholarship. A lot of our Kiwi kids and a lot of the high academic kids that also play sport will actually get their degree in 3 years. It's a lot different than here. And so then they can start their masters as part of their scholarship.
Excellent. What a fantastic opportunity. So well done, the commitment that you've shown for a number of years to get to where you are today. So it's been an absolute pleasure for us to watch you grow and support you in a small way. So well done, and we look forward to hearing where you go next.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
And okay, no late items today, no recommendations from committees. We do have some committee and group meetings for your information. We will skip through these, but if there are any key highlights from those committees, that would be good. Apathy is Steve, Councillor Belsky.
It was great to see Helen came up and enjoyed the meeting with us, which was so good to see her up there. And but I think the main concern, well, they've got a generator that's come from the tavern to the hall for their civil defence emergency, and they're wanting. I don't. Helen's here now. She was going to report back to Hannah and the civil defence team to see if they could come up and run through the equipment and get the radio working and all that. So can I just ask Helen, have you had any feedback about the civil defence for Apathy? Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
So that's good. That's all done. There's a question here for Hamish. The white lines are being renewed up in our district at the moment, which is so good to see. But they were just, one of the requests was that you look at East Pahongana Road. Have you come up to any conclusion on whether that road will be white lined, centre lined?
Councillor, no, I'll come back to you on that one.
Okay, thanks.
Can we take those queries offline? Just if any queries that you've got, take those offline to our staff, just so that we need to keep going through these this morning.
Oh, okay,
So if you
thanks.
could do
Yeah.
that, thank you.
Okay, it's just that the new tavern owner is bought the whole thing and he's very interested in our community, and so that's good. But we've still got burnouts. And can I just add one thing? A new policeman's coming.
Yes.
His name is Ben Flintall. He's from Feilding, and he's coming up to Kimbolton to live in the here it is. A new police officer is for Kimbolton is Ben Flintoff. He moves from Feilding to Kimbolton towards the end of the year. A meet and greet will be organised soonish in Kimbolton. He's a young man with a wife and young daughters.
Excellent. It's
Yep.
great. That's great
Thank
for
you.
the
Sorry
Northern
about the
region.
longness of it.
That's all right. Councillor Bell, any specific highlights by Nisi Rangiotu?
No, other than they have now decided, the meeting was cancelled yesterday, that they've decided that they'll meet bi-monthly now. So we won't have another meeting till end of November.
Thank you. Councillor Underwood, Huanui.
A highlight was the chorus box competition. The community committee arranged for a local student to paint the chorus box in Huanui, and the cow representing the rural nature of the community and wearing the Huanui school hat, representing the importance of the school to the community. And it was one of the 12 chosen in the country for the calendar.
It's very cool. Yeah. Thank you. Kimbolton, that's Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The play centre has changed, has been salvaged and has changed and is being reopened tomorrow after 11 weeks with new administration, and I've been invited to attend that at 3 o'clock tomorrow, which I will do. The police sergeant, local sergeant came up and advised the community about the appointment of Ben, or the offer or the recommendation to have him appointed. Is that the actual situation? And yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, Pahongana.
Nothing much exciting from the committee meeting, but the following day I attended the Total Reserve Advisory Group hosted by Horizons. We had a visit out to Total Reserve. There's some quite exciting plans there to primarily around shifting the Kakatea campsite, which is the first one on the left as you go down to the reserve, away from the current site because it's particularly flood prone, and building a new campsite up on the top on Pongana Road opposite the Highland home. That will be probably some years away before that happens, of course, by the time they can arrange funding, but I think this council can expect a request for some roading assistance in regards to the entranceway to that. So we'll look forward to that.
Thank you. Councillor Underwood, Rongatea.
The committee acknowledged the chair, Lance Berry, in his receipt of the King's Service Medal for services to the community and the fire brigade, and also a reminder that their fireworks is on the 1st of November, Friday, the 1st of November.
Excellent. Thank you. Sensen, Councillor Short.
Thank you. A small but dedicated team at Sensen. They're just working on a Central Energy Trust grant to upgrade lighting in the hall. It's quite, I don't know if you've all seen the Sensen Hall. It's actually quite big, $12,000 to change the lighting over to LED lighting. They have been concerned for some time about the community swimming pool. There seems to be no engagement between the small group of people that run the pool and the community committee. And they they have been concerned because they feel that the pool needs maintenance or the building needs maintenance. So they've actually managed to get one of the community committee members to be a swimming pool committee member. So now there will be some better feedback, and we will be able to hear what's happening over there a little bit more and see if there's anything we can do to be of assistance.
Excellent, thank you. Waituna West, councillor Quigley.
Thank you. Well, only 2 people turned up, so quorum was a bit of an issue, but we did have a bit of a chat, and they were concerned that they were elated actually that they finally got some metal on Tupawai Road after 2 years. They thought that was great. It all went downhill from there. They were concerned about, well, what's going to happen with the grass outside the library. I said, I don't know what's going to happen with the grass, but I'll find out what is going to happen with the grass outside the library.
Thank you. So if we can take those queries offline.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that, sure.
Or raise them and ask the exact time, we can get those followed up for you.
Okay. Yeah, that was about it really. It was a short meeting. We were gone in half an hour, so it was great.
Thank you. Councillor Blackmore, Youth Council.
Our last meeting, we had MP Suze Redmayne attend and run a session on her role in representative democracy, which is really good amount of interest, and it has led to the team wanting to go and do a parliament tour. So we now have that to see if we can get into our schedule somewhere.
Excellent. Thank you. It's great to hear what's going on around the district.
Your Worship, sorry. I don't think we mentioned Halcombe.
No, Halcombe wasn't on that list.
Sorry, no, when I think about it, so I withdraw. Sorry, it was a week, but no, it was this last week. Sorry, yeah, just business as usual. Once they're also a team that is tired. They have major possum issues around the walkway, and Horizons are refusing to engage, saying that it's not their role. But they've managed to reach out to a provider that has some community-based approach to assisting, so they're hopeful that they will be able to get the possum issue under control.
Excellent, thank you. And I also just want to publicly acknowledge our Deputy Mayor and Councillor Ford and Janine, who took part in a Local Government New Zealand Akona webinar talking about the setup that we have with our community committees and how that works, and also our new Marae Hapu policy. So I understand that was well received, and there was a number of questions. So it's really good to be able to share what we do here and get the recognition for it as well. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Right, we move to the officers' report. On page 15, we have standing orders. This is the quorum amendment. This is simply administration bringing it in line with the decision that was made that those members who join us via Zoom are able to be counted, or online are able to be counted as part of a quorum for council meetings, which makes absolute good sense. Hand it over to Ash and Francis.
Yeah, you've pretty much presented it and said what I was going to say. The reason we're doing it now is the change is permanent, whereas before it was through temporary legislation. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Underwood.
Thank you. It says audio visual link, but the visual part would have to be compulsory, would it, to confirm identity?
It's sort of open to interpretation. Some councils kind of require that you are visual, and if you turn your camera off, for example, that's then marked as absent. We're not quite all over that in terms of recording that. It's pretty tricky to manage. So if you're in at the start, we kind of just assume you're there, but I'm happy to take any guidance if you collectively want to change that approach.
And just one other question. Is there any maximum number of attendees that can be on Zoom? So the whole meeting could be on Zoom if we...
Yeah, generally, although there is a provision in the standing orders that if the chair is on audio visual link, that the deputy chair will undertake the chairing duties. If everybody's over Zoom, then presumably that just doesn't apply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, look, thanks, Your Worship. I think it's pretty straightforward, although audio/visual, in my view, means audio or visual and or. If it was audio visual, there'd be no slash in amongst it. So you can make it as grey as you want if it suits your purpose. But having said that, I think it's just pretty straightforward administrative task. So I'm just happy to go straight to the recommendation, Your Worship, that the council adopts standing orders without further amendment.
Thank you. I have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Short. Any discussion? Councillor Ford.
Happy to support the motion, but I would just put a request that we don't sort of default to the audio with or without a slash visual as sort of the norm. You know, I do think it's much better to meet in person if we can, but the option is there if we can't. And so I'm perfectly happy to support it, but that's just a comment I'd like to make.
Yeah, that's a good point. The priority is if you can get here face to face, that's the best way for it to be. So we have a mover and a seconder. No further discussion. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Right, we go to page 22. This is the delegations manual. So there's a number of RMA amendments. Again, it's an administrative process that we need to adopt. So, Ash.
Yeah, thanks. That's again, that's pretty much the summary. There's obviously quite a few of them in this one because we did it sort of on a whole of utilities team, sort of updating it. And preferably it's nice to bring these in a group rather than drip feeding them. But happy to answer any questions, or I'm sure Hamish can answer any more specific questions around role titles if you have them.
Councillor Underwood.
One of the positions there at Land Development Contractor, is that a MDC position or an outside position?
Through you, Your Worship, we contract in some of that technical expertise as opposed to having them on staff. It's been a role that's been difficult to fill, but also it comes and goes in terms of the volume of development. So it's one that we use as a sort of as a gap fill as we need to in there. So we have a couple of contractors that would fit that definition.
Thank you.
Okay. No, any further questions, comments? Otherwise, there is a recommendation. I don't expect you to read it all. On page 22, Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, happy to move, Your Worship, that the council makes the below changes to section 8.2 of the Resource Management Act 1991 of the delegations manual as listed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor McFadyen, thank you. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks, team. Thank you for that. Right, we move to page 26. So this is moving into the hearing of submissions for our gambling venues policy. So this morning we are hearing from 5 of our 35 submitters to this topic. And there are a number of recommendations there. Thank you. So welcome, Lisa. Anything you wish to highlight there for us?
Good morning, Your Worship, councillors, colleagues. As Mayor Helen has indicated this morning, we're hearing from 5 of our 35 submitters on the draft gambling venues policy. So the purpose of this day really is to provide an opportunity for those submitters to share their views in person, and also provides you with an opportunity to seek any clarification, so to ask any questions of clarification. However, we're not making any decisions today, just a reminder on that. This is simply the hearing. Deliberations is scheduled for the 7th of November council meeting, and that will be when we will, you will have that opportunity to discuss as a group the pros and cons of the different options and to come up with your preferred approach. So the information in the deliberations report will include a summary of all of the submissions received and any requested changes that submitters have asked for. And then we will, once you have confirmed your preferred approach, I will finalise the policy and bring that back to you at the 21st of November council meeting for final decisions. So this is kind of one of those initial steps. Yeah, and so you have received hopefully all 35 submissions, so you can start to read those. I thought it would be useful to have them all up front so you could kind of see how these submissions fit with the others, if you were interested in kind of looking at that. And that's pretty much it. So happy to answer any questions before we invite the submitters up.
Thank you for that. Any questions of Lisa? It's reasonably straightforward. I think the key thing here is that we are hearing submissions, the opportunity to ask questions of our submitters, but we're not here today to make any decisions. So there is a recommendation on page 26 that we need to put forward, which allows us to accept the report and the hearing of submissions. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ford.
Yes, Your Worship, I move that Council receive the report on the gambling venues policy, hearing of submissions, and hear from the submitters who have indicated that they wish to be heard.
Thank you. Have a seconder, Councillor Hadfield. Thank you. Any further comment? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. So we have submitters here with us this morning, so let's get straight into it. First of all, I want to thank you for participating in this process and making the time and effort to submit and also to join us here today. So we'll go through the list in the order that I have here. And so starting off with submission number 9, this is the Manawatū Rugby Football League. Do we have, yes, we do. Lawrence, come and join us at the table. Yeah, just take a seat there and the microphone's on green, so you're good to go.
Ka pai.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Lawrence Eri tōku ingoa. I'm the volunteer general manager for Manawatū Rugby League. I only found out about the submission probably a couple of weeks ago. I run Manawatū Rugby League based out of Palmerston North. However, I work as a building inspector for Manawatū District Council. I took over the role of Manawatū Rugby League in 2016, and we use all various funders from Lion Foundation through to New Zealand Community Trusts, etc. But other than that, I'm just here to support the submission that I've done because I've, over the last 8 years, received quite a bit of funding from the organisations such as New Zealand Community Trust or NZCT and also Lion Foundation and all the other funding streams out there that support our program and the sustainability of our program within our community. Just a couple of numbers. Over the last 8 years, we've gone from 300 girls and boys in 2016 through to 1,400 kids to date playing rugby league in Manawatū. And we cover an area from Wanganui through to Taihape all the way down through to the Wairarapa, across to Horowhenua Kapiti, Levin, Otaki, and back up to Palmerston North itself. So we cover a very large area of kids participating in rugby league. We've kind of become a threat, apparently, to our other codes. However, at the end of the day, my biggest thing is to keep the game as a sustainability, and the likes of NZCT and all those other organisations that provide funds for volunteers. And we have no paid employees with Manawatū Rugby League, it's all volunteer based mahi. So, and what I do here in the council, I probably double that with the sport that I run for governance, training opportunities and so forth. So the last funding I received from NZCT gave us $34,000 dollars to support our program in 2024, and that's to buy resources for our kids and around the tackling and health and safety well-being of our kids, and a few other opportunities outside of our district. So this is the reason why I'm here. Kia ora.
Excellent. Thanks, Lawrence. Thank you. Any questions for Lawrence? Councillor Short.
Thank you, Lawrence. If your club couldn't receive the amount of grants that you have been getting, would that put a lot of imposition on the club fundraising and participation, barriers to access for some families?
Definitely. So currently I'm probably the cheapest organisation in Manawatū. I charge an affiliation fee of $10 based on the fact that we have no employees, and that's per child that plays our game. That helps supplement the expenditure that we incur with council fees. We use Coronation Park as our main facility. I've also engaged with our communities manager here, which I sent an email to her in regards to possibly holding the program as an alternative in fielding as well. But yeah, it does affect a lot of our communities, especially our Māori and Pacifica. And we've got a big uptake of our New Zealand European players, etc., because of the pathways that I've done to look outside of not just the region, but also nationally as well. We've just left our zone. We were a part of a zone they call Mid-Central, which incorporates Taranaki, Manawatū and Hawke's Bay. We've just left the zone and become our own independent district again as Manawatū. So our girls, our under-16s girls just recently attended the national tournament, which they came third out of New Zealand, and then our 16s and 18s boys competed at the nationals in Rotorua just recently with using funds from NZCT, actually. So it does help quite a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Balsky.
Just have you seen the effect of the gambling of the parents of these, or the caretakers of these young one playing league? Have you seen maybe the consequences of the caregiver gambling and then got no money to drive the kids to? Have you seen a reflection of that come through?
Not really. The biggest thing around, I try and educate a lot of our whānau in regards to not so much about the gambling side of things, but the benefits of receiving the funds from NZCT. I understand there's a lot of whānau in that area where they do gamble. However, that's oblivious to us. All we try and do is provide a service to service our community. And if we can make it cost effective by charging the least amount of money for our kids to participate in a sport, especially around health and well-being and kids active and so forth, in regards to the motto that Sport Manawatū do, we try and align ourselves to make sure that the focus is on the kids more than on the funding side of things.
Thank you. The final question from Councillor Bell.
Morena Lawrence, I've read your submission and listened to your kōrero today. I think one of the things that you stress is the impact that the funding has, and it's a positive one in terms of sustaining the sport so that it's affordable. Can you actually share with us, you've been there for a few years now, over the last 4 years, the funds that you've received and how much you've received from NZCT? And what the difference would have been had the funding not been there?
So from the funders itself, we'll probably gain across the board probably around about $700,000 over the last 5 to 6 years. Because it's all about the content that you're trying to. It's not so much sell. It's about trying to get across that. Yes, a lot of our whānaus are suffering in regards to the financial situations, but when you bring the kids, the tamariki, the rangatahi, the teina, etc., into the fold, and the potential pathways that they can achieve through our programs, then it definitely supports what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Amazing.
Thank you, Lawrence. Well, first of all, thank you on behalf of the community for the commitment and the passion that you have for our young people into the sport, but also for your time writing your submission and speaking to us today. So we very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, ngā mihi, kia pai tōra.
Thank you. Okay, so next up, online. Good morning. We have the submission from PGF Services. So we have the submission here and invite you to speak to it. So good morning and welcome.
Morena, I'll just try and share my screen, just one moment. Right, are you able to see that?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. It's doing.
We can see your screen, but obviously not the presentation yet. Now we've got you. We've got
me.
Yes, we
have. Thank you very much. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Andre Frew Takawinua, he Advocacy and Public Health Director aho, kei PGF Services aho I mahi ana. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I'm Andre Frew, Director of Advocacy and Public Health at PGF Services. Thank you for the opportunity to present this morning on the Class 4 gambling policy for Manawatū District Council. My first two slides describe gambling harm and the impact that it can have, as it is often misrepresented by the gambling industry. The Ministry of Health define or describe gambling harm as occurring on a continuum. So it's from low or mild harm right through to moderate and severe harm. So someone who isn't able to pay their bills due to their gambling, or they're having arguments within their family because of their gambling, is still experiencing harm. And an early intervention at that point can prevent further harm, and more importantly, severe harm, which is at the very pointy end. Now, the gambling industry tend to define harm as at that pointy end only. And that's only those who are really experiencing severe harm. The best approach is the public health approach, where efforts are focused on prevention, because actually most of the harm does occur at that low risk time and on the continuum. The Ministry of Health estimates the number of people experiencing mild, moderate or severe harm is about 250,000, which is more than the population of Wellington. When parents are gambling harmfully, it is often children who suffer the most. A single person's gambling, we know, can affect between 5 and 10 people, and children are particularly vulnerable when it's their parent or other close relative. So children with a family history of harmful gambling are between 2 and 10 times more likely to develop their own gambling problems later in life. And if the gambler was their father, interestingly, it was 10 to 13.5 times more likely. Alcohol abuse, educational difficulties, emotional disorders, and suicidal tendencies are more likely when a parent gambles. Children are also more likely to suffer physical violence or abuse if they have parents with problem gambling, especially if it's combined with other issues such as alcohol abuse. Pokies are the most harmful form of gambling in Aotearoa. It is the primary mode of gambling for those people seeking help. Most money spent on gambling in New Zealand comes from the relatively limited number of people who use Class 4 pokies. It's estimated that about 30% of losses on pokie machines come from problem and moderate risk gamblers. The likelihood of harm is higher for those people who use pokie machines more frequently. So research shows that about 50% of those who use pokies in pubs or clubs at least once a month experience some level of gambling harm. In Manawatū district, approximately $53,000 was lost on each pokie machine in the district in 2023. This money, and in fact the median income for residents of Manawatū is about $32,000 per annum. The money is most likely being lost by people who really can't afford to be losing it. Furthermore, in the Manawatū district, 80% of the Class 4 venues are located in very high deprivation areas. Gambling harm also disproportionately impacts Māori living in the region. Māori experience harmful gambling differently, and this disparity has not changed over the years. It is a systemic issue that is inequitable and unethical. Sinking lids. Now, over half of councils in New Zealand now have a sinking lid policy. It is the best policy available to councils to minimise harm from gambling in their communities. But while it might be the best policy, it doesn't go far enough or fast enough to be a truly effective harm minimisation measure. The machine numbers are not coming down in the areas where they need to come down in our high deprivation communities. That's why we urge councils to advocate to central government for greater control over the numbers of pokies in your community and for further reforms to minimise the harm these machines cause. You will no doubt hear today that sinking lids mean there will be less money for community funding. That is just not true. Not only does a sinking lid rely on a venue actually closing, it takes a really long time for it to happen. And the spend on these machines keeps going up nationally year after year. We urge councillors to vote for a sinking lid with no relocations and no club mergers to keep the numbers of these machines going down over time. Community grants. Now, you will hear from Class 4 societies and trusts today and from those organisations who receive grants from these trusts. While we acknowledge that many of these grants are for really worthy causes, we need to think about where that money is coming from rather than where it is going to. Funding communities based on a system that relies on our lowest income households, putting money into pokie machines that they can ill afford to do, is unethical. The saturation of Class 4 venues in areas of high social deprivation and the resulting harm placed on these communities is disproportionately borne by Māori and Pacific. Research commissioned by the DIA revealed Class 4 gambling transfers wealth from more deprived communities to less deprived communities. What that basically means is that more well-off communities provide only 26% of the money from pokies, but receive 88% of the grants. And conversely, the less well-off communities put 74% of the money into those machines, but receive only 12% of the grants. Online gambling often gets addressed at these hearings, but there is no tangible evidence that people will move from pokies to online gambling, and that this will occur more rapidly due to a sinking lid policy. Yes, there was an increase in online gambling during COVID-19 lockdowns. A lot of that was My Lotto sales, but people did return to Class 4 gambling after the lockdown. there was an increase in pokie spending of 116% in the quarter which followed the 2020 COVID-19 lockdown. Online gambling is under the purview of the DIA, and we will soon see regulation and a licensing system for up to 15 online casinos. That's the end of my formal presentation, but obviously I welcome any questions.
Thanks, Andre. Thank you for your submission and for speaking to it today. I open it up for any questions, please, from our team. Councillor Short.
Kia ora. Hello, Andre. I'm waving my hand and I'm not sure if you can see me. Thank you very much. I really appreciated all the data that you provided us. One of the questions I wondered is, have you taken any historical data from our district? Because while we currently have 90 gaming machines in our district now, we've already been cutting that back quite significantly over the last few years. 20 years ago, we actually had a smaller population and 136 gaming machines. So we've already made quite a concerted effort to not let it become a burgeoning issue across the district. And I think, if I'm right, those machines are only spread over, is it 4 venues? Yes. And our district is, half our population is rural, and most of those people would probably live 10, 20, 30, 40 Ks from the closest venue. So I just wondered if you had been aware that we'd already made quite an effort in the past.
Absolutely, and we commend that. I guess our concern is that nationally and actually in most regions, the spend continues to go up, and we advocate for the sinking lid because we want to keep those machine numbers going down. And with the introduction of the Gambling Act in 2003, we did see a lot of machine numbers drop, and the spend on pokies actually trended down for many years. But that turned around in about 2015 from memory and started to climb again. So, we recognise the efforts of many councils because that is probably a story that a lot of councils can tell. But to mitigate any further harm and future-proof it, a sinking lid is the best way to go.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I'm here, if you can see me. I was interested in your comments around high deprivation, and I was interested in your thoughts about how the Manawatū district might compare in terms of deprivation levels to other parts of the country. My understanding is that the cities or districts with large Maori and Pacifica populations probably lower or have a higher deprivation area than perhaps the Manawatū district would. And with that in mind, what's your thoughts on the number of machines that we are operating in the district now at 90? You're obviously advocating for a lower number, but how do we compare in terms of other areas? And what's your thoughts about the 90? I know you want to see them come down, but I'm sure that other areas have a lot more.
Yes, and that's fair enough. But of course, I'm not going to say that to anybody that they need more machines. But I think I hear your point. I think the bigger picture, though, is that 80% of your venues are in high deprivation, according to the deprivation index. So we are still concerned when you've got 60% of pokie venues around the country that are in medium, high or high deprivation communities. You can see that that's where these pokies are making their money, and that's where these people are losing their money, and they're in communities that can't afford to be losing it. So that is our concern. So while, yes, you might have 90 machines and 4 venues, we are still going to advocate for less machines because they are so harmful wherever they are, but particularly so when you've got the majority of them in your high deprivation communities. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. I found your piece around harm to children very compelling. Do you have any specific data information about the Manawatū district and the harm specifically to children here?
That would be quite difficult for us to, well, I mean, it is a very difficult thing to actually get a true indication of the extent of harm. We tend to, and the gambling industry will point to the number of people who seek help, for example, which isn't a good indicator of harm, because we know that a lot of people don't seek help. In fact, most people don't seek help. So what we do know is that if there is a family member who is experiencing harm, and there will be lots of it out there, then yes, there will be lots of children. And we hear anecdotally stories of children who are missing out on things, and these are basic necessities because of their parents gambling. So it's not unusual for us to hear that story, but whether I can't give you any hard data on it, but what I told you in my slide came from evidence. And there is quite a bit of that information out there about the impact that harmful gambling has on children.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bell on Zoom.
Morena.
Morena.
I have two questions. So the first, I'm interested in your client intervention data and what you deem as intervention. So that's not voluntary, that is something that the whānau or professionals have come in to deem that they are unwell? Okay.
Correct. So that's the data that the Ministry of Health collects from all the service providers around the country. It's not just us, it's across the country. But as I said before, it's not a really good indicator of the extent of harm.
You've put in here that you've had 61 clients from the Manawatū district that needed to be assisted from July 2022 to June 2023. They had to have intervention. How many of that 61 were Māori?
I could probably find that data for you.
Yes, please.
I would actually have to get it from the Ministry of Health, but yes, I can certainly get that for you and send it through, absolutely.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thank you. Not personally a fan of pokies, except the harm, but I'm going to start by challenging the high deprivation locations in our district. Basically, I believe that they're just in our town centre, and very few people live in the town centre at this stage. There might be people with less income reasonably close to the town centre, but I just think that it's not really it's not like a suburb, a poor suburb in a big city. It's just our town centre, and then there's Summit Rongatea, which is a village but with a fairly wealthy farming area around it. But my first question is, as opposed to a sinking lid, if pokies completely were removed in entirety today, wouldn't the gambling transfer to some other form of gambling, probably online? I know you sort of addressed it in terms of sinking lid, but I'm still thinking that the gamblers would find a place to gamble if the pokies weren't there. And my other question is, where do the community clubs, the sports clubs, etc., where do they get their money from if this all stops?
To address your first question, if you did take away the pokies, which is not what we're advocating for, you would not necessarily see people move to another form of gambling, such as online. And we know that in COVID lockdown, a lot of our clients said that they just used it as actually like a respite time. They didn't gamble online. And it's a very different type of gambling, sitting in a venue with a physical pokie machine, than it is sitting at home on your computer. So we don't have any evidence that shows us if people migrate from pokies or land-based gambling to an online environment. It would be interesting to know. but it isn't necessarily the case that that would happen. And I can't give you an evidence-based answer on that. And in terms of your second question regarding sports and community groups and funding, unfortunately, there has been a really unhealthy reliance created on the funding of these sports and community groups from the proceeds of gambling. And that has happened. We saw with tobacco sponsorship, everybody jumped up and down when that was removed and said, how will they survive? How will these groups survive? Well, they did survive. So I don't see, and we don't see as an organisation, that pokie funding is a sustainable form of funding for any of these groups. And I think that relying on, as I mentioned in my presentation, relying on people putting money into pokie machines to fund our community and sports groups isn't ethical, and it isn't a good way to be funding these organisations. And I do acknowledge that some of them are absolutely very worthy organisations, and it's a shame that they have to rely on funding from gambling.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield, last question.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Look, I'd just like to follow on a little bit from Councillor Ford's comments in terms of the difference between invisible and visible gambling, because I think it, from the way I view it, if you've got a problem gambling, it's an addiction. It's no different to drinking, smoking, gambling, whatever. An addiction's an addiction. It's a disease. It's a wellness issue. But at least, I guess where I'm heading is that if gamblers are gambling in a visible manner, there is a duty of care and a duty of responsibility for those environments. And I'm wondering if there's been any correlation between the visible and invisible, because, I mean, goodness me, we might think that somebody spending $100 a week on a pokie machine's a problem, or people probably spend $200 or $300 a week on lotto. And, that's invisible. People, go online for the TAB, that's invisible. People go online to other casino sites, that's invisible. And I just wonder if sometimes the push and the emphasis against one section, which is pokie machines, is perhaps taken a little bit out of context in view of the broad range of again, is what I term invisible stuff that goes on that nobody actually knows about. I guess it's no different to, somebody having a sly drink, isn't it?
Lots of different elements in there, but you are right. Different forms of gambling cause different harm. And in a physical environment in a venue, you would like to think that the venue managers and the venue staff will intervene if somebody is experiencing harm. But our experience is that that doesn't always happen, and people fall through the cracks, and the harm is often extremely significant. And, there's a legacy of harms as well. So if somebody, for example, loses their house because of their gambling, then, that impacts whānau further down the track. So the fallout from harmful gambling is massive. And I think also, lotto tickets, yes, a lot of people spend more than they can afford. Not as harmful because it's not a continuous form of gambling. So what we're talking about with pokies is the most harmful form of gambling, and how we minimize harm from, that type of gambling is what you're going to be voting on. So I think it's really hard to sort of frame it in a way is because gambling is not all the same, and different products, you're absolutely right, will cause different degrees of harm, but pokies are by far the most harmful because they are highly addictive.
Thank you. Thank you, Andre. Thank you for yourself and your organisation taking time to submit, and also for your time this morning. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, councillors.
Right, we move to submission 33. This is from the National Public Health Service, Mid Central. Sally, come and join us at the table. Welcome. So we have your written submission, and you're welcome to speak to it.
Right. Kia ora koutou katoa. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's on green.
Great.
Yes.
Kia ora koutou katoa ko Salidera toko ingoa, ko Health Promotion Advisor taku mahi ki National Public Health Service. So my name is Sally Darrah. I work as a Health Promotion Advisor for the National Public Health Service, and it's a real pleasure to be here today. Okay, so we support option 3, which is the change to the sinking lid policy, and we also support limiting relocations to defined areas, for example, based on deprivation, or not allowing relocations at all. And we also support, we would also recommend that if clubs merge, then they are unable to, the pokies are then unable to go to like a new venue. So you can only have, say, one of the venues had 18 and one had 18, and they merged together, that you can only have 18 at the new venue. Okay, so just a little look at our profits from the gaming machines over time. So you can see that they took a little bit of a dip in 2020, 21, and that would be, I'm guessing, related to our COVID lockdowns. And then we're up at about 4.9 million currently for this last year. So just a little bit of a look at how much money was spent on gaming machines, and then how much was distributed in our communities. So you can see there in 2022 that there was 4.9 million which was spent, and we had about 1.3 million go back into the community. And then about the same money spent again in 2023, but that again was about 2.3 million went back into the community via grants and that kind of thing. Okay, so this was, Andre was talking about this quite a bit, that quite a bit of the money that is spent on pokies is from low deprivation areas. So that's often people who are spending their grocery money, their rent money, their car money, etc. on the pokies. But only 12% of the money that is returned in grants. So for example, last year that would have been 2.3 million was actually in this area, was actually returned to those communities. Okay, and Andre talked quite a bit about gambling related harm. So for quite a lot of people, like about 50%, they might experience some sort of violence or in the family, or an argument is occurring from pokie related harm. Kids, if kids are seeing that gambling related messaging and they're seeing, their parents gambling, then they're more likely to do it themselves. For some people, that means an empty cupboard, or money that is not being able to be spent on groceries and that kind of thing. And also we have, it doesn't just affect the gambler, it affects those people around them who maybe rely on them for feeding them, for getting them to sports, and all those school expenses, all of those kind of things. And we know that Māori are more likely to experience the money problems or gambling related harm. And yeah, as Andre was saying, it's estimated that only 16% of moderate risk or problem gamblers actually access services. So we just had a wee bit of a think about what would happen if that money that has been spent on gambling in the community was actually spent on other things. So in our country in 2018, 2019, there was a study that they looked at gambling related spending, and this is just on pokie machines. So we're looking at 924 million at that time that went into the pokie machines. They have estimated that on that figure that the cost to retail would have been about 450 45 million. And so that's actually a lot of money that could be spent on other things, that might be spent on groceries. If you look as a farming community who actually produces a lot of food in the area, that's, you know, a lot of money that could have gone back to those farming communities as well. And then also the cost there is potentially about 1,700 jobs could have been created if that money was spent in the retail sector. And I was just having a wee think about that. Dropped my son off at Fielding High and went, oh, that's about the size of the school, and I saw how many people there were arriving, and just, yeah, it was quite a good representation to me about how many people potentially could have income as a result of that spending. And also we had a look at the sinking lid policies. So as National Public Health Service, I'm in the Te Ikaroa region, which is the sort of the bottom of the North Island. We don't include Taranaki, but these are all the councils which have sinking lid policies currently. And so there's only actually a few which don't have them at the moment. And so quite often sort of larger geographical councils, but smaller populations. And then we have, these are the councils who have adopted no mergers or relocation policies. So Porirua City Council, Hutt City Council, Hapiti City Councils doesn't allow mergers or relocations, and the Joint Wairarapa policy doesn't allow relocations in Masterton or in high deprivation areas in Kātaton or South Wairarapa. Okay, and just back to our recommendations again. So, yep, we certainly would support a change to the sinking lid, as well as the limiting relocations and the no transfers of pokie machines if clubs merge. And also I have heard a bit of kōrero about the online gambling as well. And I'm aware that the Department of Internal Affairs is looking at some legislation around that online gambling space as well, because we definitely know that that needs tightening up as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sally. Thank you for your submission and being here this morning. Questions, Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks for that. A note in here, make reference to the 2016 Health and Lifestyle Survey, found that 50.3% of people who played pokies in the pubs or clubs at least once a month experienced some level of gambling harm. Then further down, I also note that in 2020, the Health and Lifestyle Survey, again, another one was done. Is there any, it would have been useful, I think, to understand whether that 50.3% had changed between 2016 and 2020. I mean, 2016 is 8 years ago. A lot changes in 8 years. And the other question I've got is around the point you made around the estimated 445 million. Again, when we're talking about you know, gambling as an addiction and a problem, as a health problem, to me it would have been, I would have found it very useful to have a comparison to say, well, what's the estimate on other addictions like smoking and alcohol, you know, because I think that helps for me to put it into some degree of context, you know. So we're looking at 445 million in gambling, but you know, what does that look like for other you know, other areas of addiction like smoking and alcohol? It would have been just interesting to know that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So just to go, maybe I'll answer that question first, and then I might get you to repeat the other question. So if we're looking at that 445 million, that's could go back into the community. So you're wanting to know what the effect, or what the rates of, or the cost on smoking is?
Well, just as a comparison, if you've got 445 spent on gambling, 445 million, you know, to put it into a context and to compare it with other areas of, of health concern like smoking and alcohol just would have been useful. That was
okay.
the question.
Yeah, well, we could probably get
Yep.
that
And so
information. Though we would, I don't know if we have the, we can probably find out what the expenditure on alcohol is per year, but we don't know obviously how much of that is addiction and how much is, just.
Okay,
just
understand
use.
that. Yep.
And then I'm just thinking with our smoking rates have dropped substantially. But I think a packet of cigarettes is up around $35 now. So if you're looking at somebody who is smoking, I don't know, a pack a day, then, that's obviously quite a lot of money that's being spent.
So just for clarity, is the 445 million gambling, or are you saying the 445 million is actually problem gambling?
No, so the gambling overall, the money that went into the machines was 924 million, I think. And then the 445 is the money that could have been used, that went into gambling machines, which actually could have been used for spending in other places. So that is when people are spending their money on gambling and not other things. So it means that that day when they were gambling, they were spending their shopping money. They were spending.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay.
Yep.
I understand your question now.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Thank you. And so originally, I mean, you've got a health and lifestyle survey done in 2016 that takes out 50.3%. And it just would have been useful, seeing there was another survey done in 2020, to have a comparison to see what that trend was.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we would have put that information in there if it was available. And we did kind of dig around and see if we could find, but I'm pretty sure that there might be another health and lifestyle survey out soon. So that would be really interesting to see again. And also, if we look at which I didn't include as a slide, but if we look nationally at the money spent on gambling, it has continued to rise. Like, it is a lot higher than it was in 2018, 2019. And you even see it in your own community. We've gone up to about 4.9 million last year.
So does that raise higher than population growth across the board?
I'd have to look at that. Yep, but we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally. Conscious of time, so we'll have to leave it there. But again, thank you for your submission and for the time coming to speak to it today.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Submission 35. This is the Manawatū Regional Volleyball Association. Kelsey, come and join us. Thank you for your submission. We have that in front of us and you're welcome to speak to it.
Okay, first, thank you for having me. Like Lawrence, I work within a regional association for sport. Manawatū Regional Volleyball Association only started 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we had around 800 participants. And this year we've had 7,000 participants within the region. Much of our funding is through grants and trusts. I'll explain later, I guess, more detail around how much we'd have to increase those participation fees for our kids to stay active in sport. Right now, financially, like most of our RSOs, we wouldn't be functional without grant funding. I guess a little bit of stats that I feel are important. We know that 40% of gaming profits are returned back into community organizations. In the last, I guess the last statistics I could find, that was $250 million nationally that was reinvested into our communities, with 121 million of that going into sport, and much of that at a community sport level. For us, that means our RST, so Sport Manawatū, regional sport organizations like myself, rugby, basketball, but also clubs, schools, and venues. And I think venues is one of the critical pieces that receive large portions of funding that trickle down within all of our organizations for our participants. Some of the outcomes from that, we always focus on the long-term activity health benefits within our region. So we look at participation, equitable access, because we're able to keep participation fees low, youth development, and as well as hosting major events. So we are the hosting body for Volleyball New Zealand Secondary School Nationals in Palmerston North. And that has around a $4 million economic return to the community every year that it's hosted. I'm not sure if council's aware that contract has been retained for the next 3-year cycle in Palmerston North. So that's really exciting for us to see happen. I did have just a few examples of NZCT funding within the region. One being directly with Manawatū District Council to basketball courts at the library. So that was around $22,000 of funding, as well as previously there was an article that was $550,000 that went to the Makino Pool, Skate Park, and Library. And I would just again challenge where that funding would have come from if the trust hadn't had those venues to support it. My second one is Sport Manawatū has actually just opened a partnership with NZCT directly for Manawatū district residents. It's an active communities fund, and that's to align to City Council and Palmerston North's active communities fund. So that funding will go directly to residents within Manawatū district only to help increase inactive youth primarily by breaking barriers around cost to participate in sporting events. One of my last ones is just, I guess, close to home for volleyball. We have over 150 Fielding High School students that participate in volleyball. The cost of their programs right now would likely have to quadruple if we weren't able to offset those costs from the grant funding that we receive. So most of that is funding that goes towards staff costs or venue hire. Venue hire is probably our largest expense that we see for those programs. To tie it back into some of the council's purposes, I just would again advocate that around facilities, advocating for local residents, development of resources. These are all things that the funding through those gambling facilities enable organizations like volleyball to do. I'd like to add, I guess, just a few comments from some of the other presenters. We know that there's a socioeconomic impact on families from gambling, but I'd also challenge where those proceeds do go to benefit the local community. So when we discuss that, for us on an application, we're only able to apply to funding that was directly received from that community, and it has to go back into that community. An example, not within Manawatū District, but in Palmerston North, one of our venues, as soon as the sinking lid policy was approved, had a fire. Those machines are not able to be replaced under the sinking lid policy. And so 1 year out, that venue we will see a decrease in funding immediately from Pub Charity because of that incident. So it's not just long-term implications, but we've seen a pretty short turnaround in how that can affect our local funding into community sports. I guess a few other points would just be around the lockdown, seeing increased gambling in lotto. So we do see that closing of venue doesn't necessarily decrease gambling. And the lack of increase of online gambling, I would just, again, argue that the events that they typically do gamble around were also not being run during that time of lockdown. Yeah, just to close, I would just strongly urge the council to consider where funding would come from into those community organizations if we were to see a decrease in the facilities that provide revenue back into our community organizations.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thank you very much. Open it up for any questions from our team. So you've made those points very well, and we've taken those on board. So thank you. Thank you for your time again. Thank you for the work that you do helping our young people in volleyball, and appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And finally, submission 11 from the New Zealand Community Trust. Welcome, Ben. Good to see you back again. Ben was here a couple of weeks ago. We did the launch of the fund that Kelsey mentioned, the fund that NZCT have put up for our region, specifically for Manawatū district, to help get young people active.
I might just grab a drink of water.
No problem.
Yeah.
So we have your written submission here, and you're welcome to highlight.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou. Thank you for giving NZCT the opportunity to speak today. We support your proposed policy. It's balanced and it allows your community to continue to enjoy the economic, social and entertainment benefits of what is a highly regulated Class 4 gambling model. Arguments for a sinking lid are badly flawed. Consider this graph. Let's see if I can get this working. Here we go. Since 2003, many TLAs have adopted sinking lid policies and pokie numbers have reduced by 11,000 machines, or 44%. The red line at the bottom, sorry, it's going to be a little bit hard to read for people with eyesight like mine, shows that the rate of problem gambling among adults was a low 0.4% in 2007. Then if you jump to 2018, when it was last measured, I believe, and through various fluctuations, that rate was found to be barely different at 0.2%. So despite what some may argue, it's actually very clear that there is no correlation between a sinking lid and reducing harm. Sinking lids do not reduce harm. You have heard an argument that perhaps it does, and I've heard some places 13%, but that 13% figure that I've heard around the traps is actually a bit of a misrepresentation of a report that states that sinking lids, as well as per capita caps, by the way, do not reduce harm, but expenditure by 13%. Expenditure. At last measure, 0.2% of all adults experience gambling harm. About half of that number relate to pokie machines. The inverse of that stat is that 98.8% of adults are not problem gamblers. It's worth comparing those figures with the consumption of alcohol, for example. Do you know that about 2% of adults are alcoholics? That's 10 times more people than are problem gamblers. Who would agree that pubs should be closed down to protect those 2% from harm? I suggest no one, because it'd be unfair on the 98% of adults who are not problem drinkers. And we've known for 100 years that prohibition doesn't work anyway. So why do people who advocate for a sinking lid think reducing the number of pokie lounges will help reduce problem gambling, especially when problem gamblers can migrate to online gambling right now, right here, 24/7? Pokie lounges provide physical gambling environments that operate under strict harm minimisation regulations. Venue staff are trained to be, and by law must be, vigilant for harm and intervene if they see it. I mean, for example, do you know that venues staff do a sweep of the gaming lounges every 20 minutes? They must do, to look for signs of harm. And did you know that punters can't withdraw from an in-venue ATM more than once without a venue staff member having to intervene? In support of a sinking lid, you may hear an argument there was no, and you have today, there was no permanent migration to online pokies as a result of the COVID lockdowns. Yes, it's true that pokie revenue did somewhat recover from COVID, but it's actually down 4.1% when you adjust for inflation. Between 2010 and 2023, pokie spend is down 4.1%. And that is unlike any other form of gambling. Lotto, TAB, casinos, when you adjust for inflation, spend is up on all those categories, but not pokies. Pokies are down 4.1%. And there's no evidence that people that have there's no evidence that returning players into those lounges aren't also still playing online. There's no evidence. And if everyone did come back to their favourite pub to play, isn't it telling you that that's actually what your community wants? And isn't that what we all want? To get gamblers dressed and out of the house to play in a physical, visible and communal environment. Everyone agrees that online gambling is growing rapidly. So I think it's rather blinkered to argue that reducing pokies will reduce problem gambling. We already know that it doesn't. But although the number of problem gamblers is very small, you mustn't minimise that harm, and we don't. The Class 4 sector, Pokie Trusts, provides more than half of the annual $20 million problem gambling levy. This resource is a nationwide 24/7 network of problem gambling services. Additionally, we, specifically NZCT, spend about $800,000 per annum on harm minimisation activity, which includes staff training, resources and technology. We work hard with our hospitality partners to ensure venue staff are trained and resourced to identify harm and support those that are affected. And it's proven that gambling as a whole has net positive wellbeing benefits of around $2 billion per annum. Think of its entertainment value, the government revenue, the problem gambling levy, the revenue for hospitality venues who are doing it tough at the moment, and almost uniquely in the world, a wide range of wellbeing return in the form of community grants. These are grants that employ community workers across your district. These grants inject money into your retail and service providers when those grants are spent. And overall, they help non-profit organisations make your district a happier, healthier and more connected community. But make no mistake, a sinking lid would ultimately cancel out pokie grants. I mean, that is the ultimate objective of a sinking lid, is to get it down to zero. And when there's zero machines, there will be no more grants. That was, as you've heard, more than $2 million in your district in 2023. What entity would replace that vital funding should a sinking lid be adopted and eventually fulfil its objective? I'm afraid council is about the only option. To replace this annual funding, you'd need to lift rates by as much as 5.3% based on 2025 rates. I imagine not many councillors would find that palatable, but that is ultimately what you'd be voting for if you went for a sinking lid. And on another matter, you should be cautious about the argument that pokies transfer wealth from the poor to the rich, as you've heard today. And for example, and I think a councillor noted this, this is based on analysis that would group fielding CBD venues into a high deprivation community, even though, of course, all people of all socioeconomic circumstances can and do patronise those venues. And on the grant side of things, that same analysis would describe the $12,000 grant we just gave the Stags for a scrum machine as benefiting the rich, because that club's based at Johnson Park, which is block coded as being a very low deprivation. I mean, is the Stags car park full of Mercedes and BMWs? I suspect not on a Saturday morning. Finally, there's no factual evidence that problem gambling causes social ills like crime, violence and drug use. Yes, those things are often comorbid, but there's no evidence of causality between those behaviours. Problem gambling is a complex pathological disorder, and blaming the machines for addictive behaviours and those other social ills is ignoring much wider societal and public health issues. Gambling has been around for millennia. It'll never go away, but you can control it, help those that are addicted, and harness that human desire to gamble for community good. That's what the Class 4 gambling model provides. So NZCT supports your proposed policy. It's balanced. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thanks, Ben. Really good points in there. Thank you. Open it up for questions. Councillor Balsky.
Thanks for your submission. You're right about human nature and gambling. I remember as a kid.
Your question, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just saying that it does happen everywhere, and therefore a controlled situation may be better. Alcohol is certainly a problem, but the question which I've want to also ask is how much of the money that they give, what's the proportion of payback? What's the percentage of them winning anything?
So to the player?
Yeah.
So for every dollar that's put into a machine, roughly 91 cents goes back as winnings.
91% goes back as winnings.
Yeah, so on average, $1 goes in, 91 cents will
okay.
come back out. And in that margin that doesn't come back out, that's what pays for the GST, the prop and gambling levy, our operating costs, the cost for the venue, and of course the grants for the community.
What's the payback in lotto? Do you know?
I think might be something like 20-30% or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. You talked about the obligations of staff in these gambling venues to intervene. Can you talk more about what is intervention?
Yeah, look, it's very easy to spot someone that's got a drinking problem. It's much harder to spot someone that is a problem gambler. So it's an unenviable task to identify problem gamblers. It's very hard. It can be even in front of you. It can be difficult to spot. So we have 3 staff members, NZCT, who are trainers. They go around all around the country and train staff, venue staff, on how to best to do it. The actual interventions. Yeah, I haven't worked in a venue, so I can't tell you exactly what happens. But by law, we're not allowed to let someone use an ATM more than once in a venue. And as I say, by law, every 20 minutes, the staff need to go through, monitor, and record everyone that's in the room. So if we're in a lounge right now, I need to say, there's a lady with blue top on playing at machine number 2. Appears to be, fine. There's another person here, been here for an hour, getting a little bit agitated with the machine. Maybe come back 20 minutes. So it's about trying to pick up those signals of people that are actually not enjoying themselves. For most people, most of the time, 98.8% of adults are not problem gamblers, and they're enjoying themselves. They're being entertained in the same way as if they put $20 into a game machine, they might put $20 into a movie ticket or a concert or a video arcade. They're doing it for relaxation and fun. But yes, there's a small percentage that have got pathological problems with gambling.
So as part of an intervention, potentially removing somebody from a machine?
Yep, we can. In fact, people can be banned from a venue. They can self-ban as well. And we have, and I'm not sure about in the Manawatū, but one of the strategies that we employ is facial recognition technology. We install cameras into venues, and if a person says, look, I've got a problem, don't let me back, which is great, they've done that, we can put their photograph into the technology, and if they walk back into a lounge, the venue staff can get an alert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Short.
Thank you. As a venue provider, I was just interested in what sort of information the Department of Internal Affairs requires from you, and how formal is that? Is there a monthly report, or do they link into the machines, etc.? Versus how can we monitor online gambling when most of it is happening on overseas sites? I find it very hard to interpret the validation that online gambling is not such a big problem, because I do a lot of work in the health and wellbeing sector, and some people call these a casino in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely is. There used to be a lady that sat in front of me on the train in the morning as I went from Kapiti into Wellington, and every morning she'd be playing the pokies, and that was 9 years ago. So I don't think anyone, problem gambling services, we all agree online gambling is growing and growing rapidly. And at the moment, there isn't good visibility of what's happening. Government are bringing in, looking to bring in regulations in 2026 to be able to tax that sector, to be able to bring some controls around that, and we welcome that. But at the moment, it's a bit, a bit of an unknown, the size and scale and speed with which it's growing, but it is generally considered to be.
Thank
considerable.
you. We will need to call it now due to time, but Ben, thank you. Thank you for NZCT making the effort to submit and to speak today. We appreciate your time. So as we said before, today was hearing from our submitters. We also have another 30 submissions in writing for us to consider and come back and deliberate, which we will do in due course. But thank you for your time today. So we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, please. If you could be back to start again at 1:45. Thank you. Cameras on.
Yeah, and it's.
Let's call our meeting to order. Thank you. Back to our agenda. We're on item 10.4, Development of Financial Contributions Policy, seeking approval to go out for consultation. Before we get into the discussion, there are 8 recommendations on the paper today. We do need to cover off recommendations 1 and 2, which allow us to get into the discussion and then into the further recommendations. So on page 60, the recommendation 1 and 2, do I have a mover and a seconder for, please?
So I don't quite understand what we're trying to do.
On page 60, recommendation 1 and 2, this is seeking approval to bring this topic back for debate, and also noting that this report today replaces the original report. Councillor Ford.
Thank you. I move 1, that the council brings this topic back up for debate, noting that the report consultation of the Development and Financial Contributions Policy 2024 and the development contribution fees was laid on the table by council on 4th of July 2024. And 2, I think it's supposed to be that the council agrees for this report, Development and Financial Contributions, approval to consult to replace the original report from 4th of July 2024 on the understanding that the new report includes updated information.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Short. Put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motions are carried. Thank you. That takes us into the discussion for this paper, and I'm going to hand over to our Chief Executive, and David, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. So, councillors, if you recall when the report came to council last time, the policy was premised on the existing revenue and financing policy, which we adopted as part of the long-term plan. And there was quite a substantial, it was suggested that there would be quite a substantial increase in development contributions. Council laid the paper on the table and requested me to go away and do some more work, which has been done. And the report that you now have highlights that work and has come up with another option that council may want to consider. Just a reminder that this isn't decision-making day, other than to be happy amongst yourselves that what is in front of you is what you wish to consult on with the community. So this is just to decide on what we may go out with for consultations. So I'll hand over to David. He can work his way through the report and the figures, but happy to take questions at the end of that.
Great, thank you, Shane. As Shane said, this is seeking approval to consult on options for the development contributions and financial contributions policy. We've had quite a few discussions about potential options that might go up. So today we present 2 that we are recommending we put forward for consultation, and I'll briefly mention the 3rd set of options as well and why officers have discounted that as going up for public consultation. I guess when you think through the options, really it's a decision around the principles that who benefits should pay, and that's usually the principle that we follow. When it comes to development contributions, they fund growth projects, and those growth projects wouldn't be initiated unless there was growth. And so under that premise, you would see developers being responsible to bear those costs. However, we know that for every growth project that happens, there are positive externalities such as increased utility or increased levels of service that are spread around the community. Economic benefit is one of those. And so another view might be that developers should pay a proportion of the growth costs because they get direct benefit from them, but that some of that cost should be shared by the community because of the indirect benefits that they enjoy too. And so where you sit on your view on those kind of ideas should be where you fall in terms of preferring one option versus the other. Just covering off the options. So option one is using the current settings of the policy, where 100% of the cost of the projects in Schedule 2, which are the growth-related infrastructure costs, are passed through to developers and development contributions. And, you know, as we've discussed before, with the increase in particularly construction costs and interest costs, that would see development contributions rising up to $53,770 for Fielding Urban, which is a substantive change, increase. The one thing to note is, you know, we've presented different bits of comparative information with other councils over the last few months. I have to apologise because I think one of the attachments was an earlier version. So we've circulated the most recent cut of those numbers. It's interesting actually comparing the two though, because you can see how much they've changed over a period of about 4 months, just with new councils coming out with revised development contributions. So if you look at that table, 53,770 is still comparatively high, but there are many other councils now with higher development contributions than that. The other thing we found is that in previous information, some councils were publishing GST exclusive amounts, and we always operate on GST inclusive here. So the table you have now is comparing GST inclusive amounts. Option two. What we've done with option two is Hamish went through and looked at a lot of the projects that sit within Schedule 2 and considered for each of those projects what proportion of that value could be put against growth, what proportion could be put against increased levels of service, and what proportion were renewals. And what that did when we went through, I can't remember how many projects there are, but there's probably 70, 80, I guess, is that about 30% of the cost could actually be reallocated to levels of service and to renewals, which would then, of course, decreases the growth program down by about $10 million. It would mean that that 30% that would reallocate would therefore be funded by rates. The implication for that would mean you'd see a decrease in the top development contribution fee to about $37,000, but we would see a 0.9% increase in rates for year 2 of the long-term plan. More significantly, you would see the dollars, the extra amount of rates that would have to collect, going from increasing by $451,000 for year 2, but over time inflating up to $1,279,000 in year 10. So that's the extra rates we'd have to collect to fund that 30%. So again, you see if someone has to pay for this, and so it's either developers or ratepayers, depending on how you cut that program between growth levels of service and renewals, you get different kind of costs falling on different people. So that's option 2. Option 3, we discounted. So we talked a lot in workshops about this idea. It was kind of at a more theoretical level, I guess, about what proportion of growth benefits directly developers, but also benefits the community. And, we talked a range of scenarios, 50-50, 30-70, 80-20. The reason we've discounted that as an option to go out to the public with is because we feel that at that level it's a bit arbitrary, especially given in option 2 we've actually gone through and looked at every single project. So because we've done that more sophisticated analysis in option 2, option 3 just feels a little bit arbitrary. So we're recommending we don't put that option up as an option as part of consultation. Good. I think that's all I need to cover. Shane,
I think the other thing just to point out with the option 3, is in discussions with our legal advisors. They also said that option 3 would be very hard legally to substantiate because we were essentially just grasping at numbers to try and offset numbers. The 2 options on the table to go out for consultations can be rigorously justified through the work and the methodology that's been applied to get to where we've got to. And our advice from our legal advisors is that that meets the test. We've also had advice from them that the 2 options that we're looking at, option 1 obviously doesn't make any change, but option 2 to go out and consult. If we were to end up in that place, then we wouldn't have to worry about an amended LTP. So we were very conscious too through this that we didn't put options up that sort of meant we had to go back and amend LTPs or amend policies. So we've ticked all those boxes with Jonathan Salter, who's a very senior partner with Simpson Grierson. So just to give council some assurance that these options that we've worked through have been legally reviewed. I haven't sought a legal opinion. I didn't see the sense in going to that cost, but we have had emails from Jonathan on that regards. So council's aware. As you can see in our recommendations, we think both of them are legitimate options to go out with, robust conversations, and they both meet our revenue and financing policy. So we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, the team, for going away and having that robust look at those costs line by line, because I think that exercise has showed us and given transparency to potentially option 2 for the community, so that we can actually say that it's been reviewed, and we recognise that there are some areas that have been associated with growth that can legitimately be under service and renewals, which then fits with rates. So I just thank you for the work, because I realise that that was a big job. Open it up for questions. Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thank you. I'm probably going to put my position up straight away, and Your Worship, colleagues, I strongly support option 2, and I propose that council states that it prefers option 2 when going out for consultation. Development and growth benefits the entire community. Option 1 came to us on the 4th of July, I think. It's quite a long time ago, and we were not happy with it. We asked for alternative options, and we asked for comparisons with other towns and cities, and in particular Palmerston North. We know that option 1 is unpalatable to developers. We've got the figurative black eyes to prove it. Our operational team have worked hard to give us options, and in fact came up with 16 options. And we appreciate that very much. We gave a steer to pursue what is now option 2, and probably look at a few other things that are probably along in the option 3 category. Have it checked legally, and now here it is as one of 2 options, option 2. Option 1 is a significantly larger increase than option 2 and will result in a big reduction in development activity at a time when development activity has reduced anyway because of a subdued market. There is no magic wand solution. The cost is the cost. Someone has to pay. But option 2 revises the proportional contribution to future capital works between growth to be funded by development contributions and levels of service and renewals to be funded by rates. The resulting effect being a movement of approximately 30% from DCs to rates, and a dollar difference in DCs for Fielding Urban of over $16,000. That's the difference between $53,770 under option 1 and down to $37,623 under option 2, which is still an increase of $11,281 over what it is at the moment, but a lot better than the option 1 increase of $27,428 or 104%. But it's still an increase of 42.8%, so it's still a big increase. The fielding intensification area proposes an option 1 increase of 19,187 or 97%, whereas option 2 proposes an increase of 7,231 or 36.2%. And in rural villages, much less of an issue, proposes an option 1 increase of 3,880 or 53%, whereas option 2 proposes an increase of only $490 or 6.6%. So in my view, rural has nothing to moan about under option 2. So I see that for the 2 fielding catchment areas, option 2 offers a large increase of 43% and 36% round figures, $11,281 and $7,231 respectively, which are significantly less than the unpalatable and even possibly obscene increases of option 1 that would severely dent development and growth and likely produce less DC income for council because of the reduced activity. And developers have used stronger wording than I've just used, and they say that option 1 would actually kill development. So the option 2 increases are still high by comparison with other places, and including most of Palmerston North, but not too bad. And I do acknowledge that the updated figures we've just been handed, the comparisons appear more favourable now than they did when we last saw the comparisons. So the other side of the ledger is the effect on rates. And option 2, I believe, is manageable and a sensible compromise. The biggest increase is for the 2025-26 year at 0.91% to cover the $451,000. And then it drops back to very small increases. I do acknowledge what we've just heard about the dollar amounts, but the actual percentage increases are between 0.02% and 0.33% for the rest of the LTP. So if our preference is option 2, and it's certainly mine, we should state that, in my opinion. Very few people understand DCs. I believe we owe it to both our development community and our community at large to tell them that we have considered 16 options, ended up with 2, and have a strong preference for option 2 and explain the reasons why. I'd also like to see reference to the development agreements, which I do think are an important part of our policy in the consultation, because they provide positive flexibility, especially for larger developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'd actually just like to seek some clarification here as to what we're actually doing, because my understanding is here we're actually just discussing whether or not we're happy for this to go out to debate, out to public consultation, rather than actually debate the rights and wrongs of what we think of either option A or B. So can I seek some clarification on that, please?
We do have the option, if you see under recommendation 4, to indicate which option we prefer. So it's being recommended to us that we go out with 2 options. However, it is council's choice if we decide that we want to only go out with 1. And then we have an option of, or not, of stating whether we prefer one of these options if we take both options out.
So, yes, I understand that. I believe that's covered somewhere in the Local Government Act, isn't it? About
we don't have to under this consultation.
It's optional for us to indicate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear: are we debating the rights and wrongs of option 1 or option 2, or are we actually just trying to come to a conclusion that yes, we're happy for the document as it's tabled to go out to public consultation?
Well,
because with all due respect to the Deputy Mayor, I felt that his narrative was actually starting a debate on whether option A or option B was actually, what we're actually debating. So
if I may
can we seek clarification, please?
I'll allow Councillor Ford to respond.
So the point of my words were to strongly recommend that we do provide an option, a preference, and that is option 2. And I gave the reasons why.
Councillor Belsky.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ford, for your explanation. And the going back and looking at what you could get away with and putting, I think, was it 0.9% increase in rates if that the difference was spread across the community. I think the rural, I think we've given up too much ground already. We've got pricing differentials in our roading that have been increased. We're also helping the business area, the redo, and help pay their debt off that they had years and years ago. I think the rural people have really pulled their weight in this area, and I would like to see both options taken out there for consulting. But it's option one for me, but I'd like to see both go out there. And I would probably prefer a preference of what this council wants. That's me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Short.
I support Councillor Ford. I think that it would be good to go out with a preferred option. For some of the reasons that he outlined, while we know that the development community understand very well the development contributions, the general public not so much. And I support giving a preference, taking both out for consultation, mentioning that there were others that we considered, but I too would like to highlight that the council's position be a preference for option 2 if others agree.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Just noted in the start of the paper about the significance of this decision that we don't have to go out for consultation if we choose not to. Is that correct?
No, you have to go out.
We have to.
You're legally required to consult on this.
So only the increases below the, I'll call it inflation rate.
Well, yeah. So on the on what you've got as option 2, that requires us to consult.
Okay. No, I'm saying that, yeah, look, I'd still support going out for consultation. I think it's significant enough to do that. And I want to thank you and the staff for your work you've done on this. We've pondered on this for some time now, given that we weren't happy with, earlier proposals. And I think this is a great step forward. I concur with Councillor Ford's comments that I think perhaps going out with a recommended option is a good idea. And I could probably say as well at this time that I'd support option 2 at this point for reasons I stated earlier in the debate last time we had it on the table. But in saying that, when we go out for consultation, as been noted today, most ratepayers wouldn't have any idea of really how the system works and would be rather confused and probably won't make a submission on it. So that could be a bit detrimental to further decision making we want to make. But at the same time, we do need strong submissions from the developer community who are going to be most affected by this. So I would encourage those people to put in a good submission and as many as possible, please. Especially to highlight the economic effects of what we're proposing. So yeah, I'd look forward to that, and we'll have a further debate later when those submissions are received, and go from there.
Thank you, Councillor Blackmore.
Just mindful perhaps of wider perception, and I just want to seek some clarification on what we've done so far. So it may appear more broadly, if we were to support option 2 as our preference, that we have been strongly influenced by our engagement with the development community specifically, which I know we have had some discussions with over the past few months as we've worked through this process. So, and often what we hear about having a preference is we've made up our mind, there's no point. And so the wider general ratepayer population may perceive we've been more strongly influenced in that way. Can you just clarify, please, what that engagement has been to date?
There's been no real engagement. What there's been is reaction from some developers and others around the figures that were presented to council last time in July, where the paper was caused to lie on the table. So when it was known that there was the potential for development contributions to move to the 53,000, then you got the response that probably you would expect. So we haven't actually engaged with anybody.
Okay.
So that was just as a result of the public papers being made known. So I don't think in any way has any sort of position been compromised by way of the position we're at now. I think going out for consultation negates that anyway, because we're basically saying the council's chosen whatever you choose, and it's out there for consultation, and everybody has the opportunity to feed into that consultation, and then council goes into deliberation. So I think we're in a good space.
Okay. How many letters did the development community directly receive from us?
Don't know exactly, Ross. I think probably half a dozen, Ross.
No, it was only 4. There was 6
Yeah.
email, but we had a number of calls.
Yeah.
Right. So there has been some discussion. I mean, I personally think because of that, having not highlighting our preferred option could be an astute decision to be made by council.
Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm comfortable with going out option 1 and option 2. I am concerned if we run with option 2 about the high rate and, you know, the rates, the percentage of rates we need to recover in year 1. But I'm equally as nervous about the fact that as we work through as annual plans work through next year, we really don't have a feel for what the total rate increase, excluding this, is going to be for next year. So I actually support going out for 1 and 2, but I don't support taking a position.
Thank you. Councillor Short.
Thank you. I see that we're sort of getting time pressured by the end of the year coming up, and that the proposed consultation time was only 4 weeks. And I wondered whether there was something that we could do to educate the community a little bit more. As say, we know that the development community well understand it, but whether perhaps at the beginning of the 4 weeks consultation, do we invite people here for a public meeting and have it explained so that, you know, Joe Blow ratepayer can gain a better understanding? I don't know whether you want to go to that level. Otherwise, if it wasn't for the fact that Christmas was fast approaching, I would have liked to have seen more than 4 weeks.
That was discussed earlier as whether we could put longer than 4 weeks in. That gets very difficult. If we extend that period, it probably pushes the decision making out till February, March, because of the fact there's no council meetings in January. And that, February's looking. But look, I think we can do quite a comprehensive reach in that 4 week period. Yeah. I know our comms team will be onto it. I think that there is already, this is pretty well known in the community already. I think some of the feedback I've had from not necessarily developers, but others, is they are aware of this. So I think we can do a good 4 week period. I think too that you always have that, your submitters have the ability to come and present, as this morning with the gambling. And so we'll be inviting that through the consultation process. The submitters wish to come and speak to council, then they can do so.
Thank you.
I'm pretty confident we can do it in that 4 week period.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thank you. We have to go out and consult. To a large extent, the developers will be, they'll understand it, and we'll get some submissions. But with the public at large, it's almost going to be a question of, do you want your rates to go up? And the answer is going to be no. And I'm not trying to belittle the public at large, but development contributions are a very complex topic, and people don't understand it. So councillors very much understand that this decision has to be ours. We're not going to get much guidance from the public at large as to what we should do. We're going to have to own this decision, and it's going to be our decision on what's best for our community. Do we want to see some development? Do we want to, and we have to be fair to ratepayers. And so, yes, we've got to go through the process, but I also think it's fair to indicate what our preference is, because they're looking to us for guidance. They haven't got a clue, and neither should they.
Thank you. Councillor Underwood.
I think, Councillor Ford, you're not being fair to ratepayers saying they haven't got a clue. I think if you explain to them, and my question was going to be, what sort of consultation document is going to go out to them? Are they just going to get the rewritten draft policy, or are they going to get the contents of this report that we've now got?
They'll get a summary of what we are proposing with the two options. So they won't get the report because that discusses other things other than the two options. But we will summarise both options, and we will, we'll make it known what those two options mean by way of impacts on rates or development contributions and the like. We will write it similarly to what the report is, but not exactly the same as far as the whole report.
Will we get an opportunity to see that before it goes out, or?
We can do that. We could circulate it. It'll just be circulated around for comment. Yeah.
I think, my view is that the explanation, if you keep it really simple, is that option one is, as previously, that the cost of growth goes to the people that create the growth, i.e. the developers. However, as part of this review, we've had a look at the costs that have been identified, and we've identified that there are costs in there that don't sit directly with increased growth, that they sit with services and renewals, therefore should be included in rates. So it's part of the review of what we're doing, and I think that can be explained quite simply to the community. Councillor Underwood.
I agree with that, and also the thinking behind it, saying that we don't want to stymie growth because of the benefits of that, and how if the cost is given entirely to the developers, then that it could be an outcome. And with that table on table 2 there, the amounts that the ratepayers under option 2 would have to recover go up, but the percentage of rates increases go down. So I assume that that is because we're projecting growth to keep those percentages down, because more people are going to be paying the rates and therefore there's a higher amount, but the percentage increases down. Is that correct?
No, those figures exclude growth. So those figures there, the
So if the
remodeled
same
rates exclude growth. We exclude growth when we look on year rates percentage increases, because growth skews it year on year.
So if there's an increased amount being shared amongst the same people, but the rates increases going down, how does that work?
Doesn't usually. So we use a snapshot of, so we exclude growth. So then we can do a year by year comparison on what is happening with rates increases. What happens practically is the rates are spread out, and when they are spread, they include growth. So one is the application of rates versus one is the comparison of rates. Can you put it better, Amanda?
If I may. Okay, I'm gonna take quite simple, sort of break it down. The first, you have got a microphone, is it not picking up? Is it not picking up? Okay. The first year, if you put half, and I'm just going to pluck a number, if you put $500,000 onto your rates your first year, you get a large percent increase of over 1%, it jumps up. But then the next year, if that 500,000 is still on the rates, it hasn't been an increase because it was an increase in the first year.
Yeah.
So your increase is the amount that you put on that wasn't there the year before. So if there's 500 put on year 1, but that 500 is still there in year 2, there's technically no increase. The only increase is if you're in year 2, you put 505 or 510. So the percent increases are a little distorting because it takes into account what you've already put on it and ignores that again because it's a movement year on year. Does that make sense?
The movement.
Yeah, it's a compounding movement.
Yeah, so the cumulative totals, those ones in that blue.
Yeah, it gets up to 1 point something mil. Yeah, and it looks like small percentages, but it's still that number actually going onto the rates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsky.
Maybe I should rethink my thoughts, because I just thank you for this here, but I see the villages and rural areas. There are 12 out of the 13 councils ahead of the rural villages for development funds. 12 of them are of the councils, it costs more to do a rural subdivision or build a house. Only 3 in the $53,000, only 3 are ahead of us out of the 12. And in the urban area and infill, we're sitting in the middle of the 6. But I think this is very good to see that the rural aren't too bad as far as development fees. And I see a smile from a few of you, which is good. But so maybe I think I agree with Councillor Campbell that not many people would have a clue about the basics behind all this, but I think it's good if we could give us some explanation with the consultation document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford, then Councillor Hadfield.
Thank you. Just in terms of the effect on rates, and we've seen a likely for next year, a 0.91% increase. I'm going to ask the Chief Executive, does he have any indication of a forward position of how we're looking for a rate in terms of rates, and particularly in relation to interest rates dropping? How are we looking overall with our rates increase or for next year?
Still early days. We've done a preliminary cut, and our budgets for next year are looking like they will line up with year 2 of the LTP as a starting position, not including any decisions that you may make either through this DC process, or you have yet to consider your any additional expenditure that might come into those budgets through the annual plan process. So just a like-for-like comparison of year 2 of the LTP as we are in a position where inflation and interest and other factors seems to have sort of cancelled themselves out to the extent that we will still sit at the projected rate rise for year 2.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Look, at the end of the day, I'm going to agree with Councillor Ford. This is actually quite complex, and actually to get to a position where the public are actually going to understand it, other than are you going to pay more rates issue, is actually quite a complex story to tell as well. And I appreciate that, because at the end of the day, if we don't have housing growth, we actually, we're limiting the growth potential and the economic development potential in the district. And if you actually put it into context in terms of what we actually invest in economic development, because we can't have it without housing, to meet increasing commercial and industrial activity, we're going to go nowhere. So actually, council supports through funding, through rates funding, other areas of economic development. I actually don't see this too differently. So whilst I concur with Councillor Ford in terms of what some of us may think the preferred option is, I think I'm a little bit apprehensive about I definitely wouldn't like to see council go out with a strong preference, because I actually think that could be misleading. And I'm a little bit actually uncertain as to whether we should indicate just a preference or not. And I know that's actually going to be the point that actually we're going to have some disagreement on. But I think in terms of the work that officers have done, I think you're to be commended to where we've got to at least go out with a tangible option. Because at the end of the day, what we don't want to do is stunt growth, if that makes sense. But thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor McFadyen.
Thank you, Worship. I concur about the great effort. Thank you very much to the staff. I think the other factor that we're not really talking about is the risk factor that at 53,000 will development completely stop and we're still going to be caught with the costs anyway, which is still going to be loaded to the ratepayers because we've under recovered. And I believe that the option 2 would give me more comfort about managing that risk. I also have a lot more comfortable position now that the indication is there or thereabouts for next year's rates around the LTP. So I do support going out with both options, and with that information, I would support us putting a preference at that option 2. As I said, as much as anything to manage the risk of the developments just totally dying.
Thank you. Right, so having had that discussion, we do have 5 recommendations to go through. I'm suggesting that we take them one at a time, given the discussion that we've had. So the first one we would be looking at is recommendation 3 on page 60. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ford.
I'll move that the council consults on 2 options, being option 1, development contribution fees are calculated using the current cost allocation settings in the development and financial contributions policy, and option 2, development contribution fees are calculated using revised cost allocation settings in the development and financial contributions policy. This involves revising the assessment of the proportion of future capital works projects attributed to growth and to other funding sources, level of service and renewals, and Schedule 2 of the policy, reducing the overall proportion of the program assessed as growth-related works funded by development contributions, and increasing the proportion assessed as either level of service-related or renewals-related, both funded by rates.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McFadyen. Thank you. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Recommendation 4. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ford.
I'd like to move that for the purposes of consultation that the council indicates it prefers option 2.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Campbell. Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. I would assume that in stating a preference, we will provide a good story as to why council prefers option 2.
Absolutely. Just like we've done with LTP preferences. It's essential that we do that. Thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Thank you. Councillor Blackmore and Underwood, do you wish your votes to be recorded? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you. And then we have recommendation 5, 6, 7 and 8, which can all be done together. And I don't expect you to read them all out. So if I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ford.
I move that the council notes that the indicative development contribution fees per household unit equivalent, the HUI, grouped by catchment area under each option would be, and I refer to table 1 on page 61. And then further, that the council notes that the indicative increase in rates required under option 2 would be, and I refer to table 2 on page 62. And further, that the council notes that option 2 would create inconsistencies with mandatory statements in the council's 2024 to 34 long-term plan and the infrastructure strategy 2024 to 54. These inconsistencies would be clearly noted and explained when making the decision following consultation in accordance with Section 80 of the Local Government Act 2002. And further, that the council consults on the Development and Financial Contributions Policy 2024 in accordance with Section 82 of the Local Government Act 2022 over the period from 30 October 2024 to 29 November 2024.
Thank you. Seconded by councillor Quigley. Any further discussion? Councillor Underwood.
Thank you. These two tables, will they be part of the documentation that go out to consultation?
Yep.
Table 2 at the very bottom there, where it says DC contribution to increase. Is that indicating that the ratepayer will be contributing to the development contribution? Is that what that language indicates?
I think it would be best to change that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I think that's a good indication. If we don't understand that, then it does need to be simplified for the community. Thank you. Any further discussion? So I have a mover and a seconder for those motions. I put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you. Good discussion. We have a way forward. And it's important we get the communication right, but also when you're talking to your community committees, etc., there's an opportunity to explain the process we're going through and why. So appreciate all the work that's been done. Thank you. Councillor Short.
Possibly you could put together a one-pager for elected members of likely questions that we might get asked. That would just be a bit helpful.
Yes, thank you. And David's nodding, so I think that would be valuable to do that to make sure we are consistent with our messaging. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Right. Okay. Oh, but then we won't actually go into it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I just need to go into public. Right, thank you. No late items. So I will move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of minutes and the contract award recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ford. We'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you.